Welcome to Her Remarkable History. Remember, to support our channel, please subscribe. The birth of the tyrant Tudor King. The most notorious Tudor king to have ruled over England was Henry VIII, who throughout his reign would execute his second wife Anne Boleyn and his fifth wife Catherine Howard. His love life was tragic and horrific, and inside of his lands there was a great degree of fear throughout the population, as 70,000 people were executed in the cities and towns of his kingdom. But despite this, at the time, many people loved their king, and when he died, they were devastated, despite his huge changes to life. He was a king who had shut down monasteries, abbeys and religious houses, making monks, nuns and thousands homeless. He would also steal their riches and wealth. But much is documented about his life and brutal policies, but little is told about the king's early life and his birth. So what is the story of the birth of the tyrant Tudor King? Now, Henry VIII's father and mother were Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. Their marriage was a happy one, and the couple had united England and brought an end to the Wars of the Roses. Henry would not be the oldest son of the couple, despite being the heir to his father, as he had an older brother and sister. His brother Arthur, the Prince of Wales, was heir to the king, and Henry VII would spend a great deal of time on making sure that Arthur would be prepared to one day rule England. But this would never happen, as he was taken ill at Ludlow Castle shortly after his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, and he would succumb to this illness. Henry's older sister was Margaret Tudor, who today would have been the heir to the throne, but during the 15th century there was an acceptance that women did not take the throne. Queens were considered only to serve as a purpose, as a consort, a mere advisor, and for someone to birth the next heir, who they hoped was a male. Because of this, she was passed over in line of succession following Arthur's death. But Henry VIII was born on the 28th of June 1491, inside of the Palace of Placentia in Greenwich. His parents had established 2 nurseries for the royal children, and it was where Elizabeth of York spent much of her time when she wasn't at court. Also, in preparation for their growing family, they improved and expanded much of their properties. During her pregnancy with the future Henry VIII, Elizabeth would have entered confinement in the Palace of Placentia, and would have been attended on by only her closest ladies-in-waiting and midwives who would deliver the prince. It's believed that Henry VIII, after his birth, would have been considered the spare to the heir, but he would later obviously become the heir and next king. He was one of 7, but only 3, Arthur, Margaret and Mary, would survive infancy, other than Henry. Following his birth, he was baptised by Richard Fox, the Bishop of Exeter, after he was taken to the Church of the Observant Franciscans near to the palace. His upbringing was very different to his brother's, as it was said Arthur is never brought up with his mother at all. From infancy, he has got his separate household at Farnham, then it goes somewhere else in the home counties, then at the age of barely 5, he's packed off to Ludlow to become this little prince in the making, in a heavily male household. Henry, on the other hand, is literally in the bosom of his family, with all of these adoring girls and ladies and his mother's ladies around him. His mother probably taught him to read. Henry VIII enjoyed a very close relationship with his mother, but he was raised as a boy who would not become the king. It's believed in a sense he may have also been spoiled, or that he was raised in the shadow of Arthur, but that this shadow was beneficial to the child Henry. He spent time with Arthur in 1497, when he was around 6, but Arthur would spend more time with his father, and Henry more time with his mother. Despite almost being overshadowed by his brother, Arthur, his father did invest a lot of titles upon him. At the age of 2, he was appointed the Constable of Dover Castle, and the Lord Warden of the Cinque Ports. He was then also made the Earl Marshal of England and Lord Lieutenant of Ireland at the age of 3, and was then made a Knight of the Bath. Further titles and investitures came, and he was made the Duke of York, and then the Warden of the Scottish Marshes, all before the age of 5. He was appointed to the Order of the Garter at the age of 3, and the reason for this was to ensure that his father Henry VII, in a sense, held power over these elusive and powerful positions. He did not want to share them with other dominant families at court, and Henry VIII, obviously, as a young boy, wouldn't benefit from it as a child. He was more interested in the affections of his mother and what the royal nursery could provide him. Despite this, very little is known about Henry VIII's early life, as he was considered a man who would probably never become king. 'Twas believed Arthur and his children would carry on the Tudor torch, but Henry did receive a first-class education from the best teachers and tutors that would visit the royal court. He was fluent in French and Latin, and he would also, at the age of 10, be involved in the wedding of his brother to Catherine of Aragon. Interestingly, the bride that day would later be Henry VIII's first wife. Following Arthur's death, all of the deceased's heirs' duties were thrust upon Henry, and he then became the Duke of Cornwall and now the new Prince of Wales. But it's considered that Henry VIII came onto the throne as if he had been untrained in the art of kingship, as Henry VII, after Arthur's death, would shield him and would not really show him in public. Following Henry VII's death on the 21st of April 1509, the 17-year-old Henry VIII would succeed him as king. He was declared King of England, and with this, the most shocking and brutal reign of the Tudor monarchs would begin. Henry would stay inside the Tower of London for a short while before his coronation, and this was the very place where later 2 of his wives would meet a bloody and brutal end inside the notorious fortress. His reign was one of great change in England, and no one could have predicted what would happen in the decades following. With the huge changes to the church and bloodshed that occurred, he was a man who would execute some of his closest friends and was unpredictable. But he wasn't always like this. As a child and a young man, he was a mummy's boy. He would rarely be seen away from Elizabeth of York's side, but it's likely that her death also had a huge impact on him. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.